There comes a time in a mystical world where you and your friends watch some creepy videos, some creepy stories, creepy animations. We're gonna do that today. And you know what? That's what I love. And what I love about this is people love creepy animations. And that's why, and I love creepy animations. And if you don't, then you're gay. You're gay. You're gay. For life. So bye. So not. And let's roll this in. Let's look for some creepy videos. Dun dun dun. Yeah, I know you're getting creeped out. I know you're getting creeped. If you're not getting creeped out, then number one, I'm a bad person to scare people, and yeah, let's just.
For the past year, I've encountered a buttload of crazy people and have accumulated even more crazy stories. While most of them would make you laugh, the one I've chosen to share was terrifying while it was happening. It still gives me shivers when I remember it. A little more than a year ago, I applied for and got a job at my favorite convenience store across the street from my house. I'd moved there my sophomore year in college and decided to stay after I left school. This little store has served as a savior to me.
Why?
Living as young men often do, I had very little money, but I was always confident I could find something to fill my belly regardless of how much was in my pocket at the time. So, when the time came, I was no longer able to rely on my parents for money. The corner store was the first place I went for a job. I was in luck. Only the day before, one of the employees was fired for stealing from the register. I took his place, and I've been here ever since. Like any other corner store, we sell alcohol. Beer, wine, liquor, the whole boat. Naturally, this makes us a beacon for the local drunks. These folks have served as countless hours of entertainment.
Bro.
While most are harmless people, on one specific occasion, a horribly violent...
Listen, if you look at me, if you're drunk and you look at me like that, I swear to God, run them hands, because I'm not fucking, you're not looking at me, look like you're gonna, like, this is basically what he's saying. You also can, he was saying, listen, you can't keep that is, and rape. I'm not trying to get demonetized, I'm gonna shut my mouth before I get demonetized, bro. But I'm serious. If a person looked at me like that, I run them hands.
Nothing had changed. The outburst occurred. Upon arriving the second time, it was a quiet straight to the cooler containing a quart of 40-ounce size Most of the regulars had made their appearance out of the ordinary, as I said, but tonight an argument between the two started soon after their arrival. Initially, I couldn't hear what it was about, but soon I could hear everything they said across the store. I minded my own business for a while, but once the female began screaming curse words at the man, I felt like I had to at least get them to take it outside. I wasn't sure what to say, but I began my walk to the opposite side of the small store. Before I was halfway there, the man started screaming back at the woman. I'm not sure exactly what she had said to him, but it had obviously infuriated him. Mere moments before, he had taken a quart bottle of Busch or some other cheap beer from the cooler. All of a sudden, he began striking down at the woman's head with it. I'm not sure if he thought it would break or if he intended on hurting her with the nearest thing, but strike after strike he continued. It was a horrifying thing to witness. I blame the entertainment industry for giving people the false impression of how easy it is to break a beer bottle over someone's head. I assure you, it's very hard. Following the fifth or sixth strike, the woman had dropped completely to the floor and stopped moving. The guy stood over her for a moment, but looked up when I assumed he heard me running towards him. The second he saw me, he ran out the side door and disappeared into the darkness.
Bro.
The sight.
Come back? No. Listen.
The second he.
If you run away after you did something, bro. Number one, there's no point of running away. You know there's cameras around here, so you're getting caught instantly. I swear, this guy's just like.
He looked up when I assume he heard me running towards him.
Oh shit!
The second.
Oh fuck that! Oh hell no, bro! Oh, these niggas ain't catching me.
Darkness. The sight of her laying there made me sick to my stomach.
Ugh.
The blood dripping from her ears was almost as shocking.
Why are you looking? Call 911, man.
It seemed like a bad idea to touch her, so I made the decision to let the paramedics check her pulse. When they arrived, she was still alive, but they didn't have much hope for her survival. The cops certainly weren't in any hurry to get there, but when they did finally arrive, 45 minutes later, I filled them in on all I had seen. From the way they reacted, I got a strong feeling that they were very familiar with the two. While on shift, a few days later, my boss called with some news. The female was brain dead, and her family had made the choice to let her pass. The cops had picked the guy up the following night. From the description my boss gave me, he didn't even seem to remember what had happened. The doctors that examined him said that it's likely he truly may not remember what he did, because of the many years of alcohol abuse had possibly destroyed his brain. Sounds like he might not get the full punishment due to him under the law. I'm not really sure how I feel about that.
Oh my
Sometimes
God.
It seems like people really do get away with murder. During my time in college, I had a friend whose dad owned an 800-acre piece of land in eastern Texas.
Oh, well, we're just gonna head to this one. Well, you know what? Just roll the clip of me saying next. Or you know what? Just roll the clip of this. Just roll the fuck clip. Number 2.
And whose dad owned an 800-acre piece of land in eastern Texas. In the past, he leased it out to hunters and paper companies, but was no longer doing it.
What's that noise?
He had built a cabin on the land a few years before and would let us go out there from time to time to mess around. It served as a great way to relax from the pressures of school and getting closer to nature. The spring break of 1990.
Oh. No. We are not starting the goddamn animation with a full crackhead over here. This man is over here like, I'm wondering, are you kidding me, bro? Let's go back to the goddamn, there we go. And you know, I'm not even gonna make a joke. This is
we
creepy,
loaded up our
already.
trucks and headed for the
Is that a girl or a boy?
Our
I'm sorry to
plans
say that.
included shooting
I'm
guns,
sorry,
drinking beer, and
get
other things
demonetized so
rednecks
fast.
like us do in the woods. Our first morning kept us pretty busy, cleaning the cabin and moving all our stuff inside. Around dinner, we made a big fire outside and cooked a bunch of steaks and fried potatoes. We skipped dessert and broke open some beers. The sun went down not long after, and for the remainder of the evening, we got loaded and passed around a joint or two. At some point in the night, I heard a shuffling noise outside and went out to check on it.
Why? No, not even one friend. You don't go with anyone else. You just go by yourself.
The fire was barely burning.
If you get killed, then that's your fault, dumbass.
Just outside of its light, I swore I could see the shape of a man let me just show you what the hell I'm doing. From what I could tell, it was outside and went out to check on
my niggas, I'll be right back.
The fire was barely burning at that point, and just outside of its light,
my nigga, what is that? No!
Standing
like that's
still.
what I would do.
From what I could tell, he was facing me, perhaps waiting to see what I would do. I blinked my eyes real hard to get a clearer look, but my position and the lack of light made it hard to see clearly. The shape continued to stand still, so I decided I'd walk up a little closer in hopes of getting a better picture. The thought terrified me, but I was transfixed by the being. Or perhaps I was still too intoxicated to make wise decisions.
Because you're
I took
stupid.
2 steps forward, but was distracted by a voice behind me. My friend had woken up and noticed the door was wide open. So he got out of bed and saw me walking around the fire. His voice caused me to jump a little, but I soon realized who it was speaking. I asked him if he saw the figure on the other side of the fire pit. He just laughed at me and said I must be so stoned I was seeing things. we laughed it off and returned to bed. On my way, I turned back to take one more look, but the shape was no longer there.
Oh, that's kind of weird.
I chuckled to myself and went back to sleep.
No.
The next morning, I wrote the whole experience off as the result of too much fun and went on with my day.
What the fuck is
We spent the first half of it fishing at the big pond. Post-lunch was shooting guns and one guy's compound bow that he had just bought. The beers and smoke were broken out after dinner. A game of poker was attempted but soon canceled in favor of another evening telling lies around the fire. On one of my many trips to relieve myself that night, I was spooked by the sound of a stick breaking close by and noped it back to the fire. The look of fear on my face made the other guys laugh their butts off. I tried to explain what had happened, but was quickly reminded that we weren't the only creatures in the woods. The reasoning seemed sound, so I accepted it.
You're going to die.
Not long after, we were standing around, involved in some deep discussion, and I turned to speak to the guy on my left. What I saw caused me to clench up so tight I could have snapped a steel rod with my sphincter. Standing within a few steps behind my friend was another man I did not recognize. It was like he appeared out of nowhere. What made it creepier was that he was staring intently at the back of his head, almost like he was trying to bore through it with his eyes. I remained frozen stiff. The longer I
say something. Say yo, my nigga. Yo, bro. Look behind you. Not fucking. Like what the fuck is that? I'm getting so pissed because all these people don't know what like warning is. Warn your friend. Warn someone. Not fucking just look at the goddamn thing behind you. Are you dumb?
At him, I realized he was the same being I saw lingering outside the light of the fire the night before. He was average height with a long, unkempt beard. My friend
your friend is just like, so what's going on?
Forever, unaware of his shadow. After several long seconds, the stranger turned to me with a blank expression and walked away. This was when my friend finally noticed my horrified look. When he spoke, the thrall of fear was released, and I began pointing and rambling about what I had just witnessed.
Oh, now you know.
He and my other friend laughed at me again. There was no way I was seeing things this time. I described the man, and one of them suggested he was a Bigfoot. Despite my protestations, no one was buying it, and I eventually cut my losses and shut up. However, I wasn't beat. Their mockery had made me even more determined to prove the stranger's existence. The next 2 days were quiet. No stranger, in other words, but I kept my eyes peeled for anything out of the ordinary.
Sweet.
By our 5th morning, I was beginning to question my sanity.
You guys not supposed to leave soon? Because
I'm
out.
Around us twice, and now it had suddenly disappeared.
Really just want to stay here just to...
I resolved to put my quest on the back burner until some new evidence arose. My friend's dad had mentioned him, an owner of one of the surrounding properties, had spotted a small group of wild hogs running through his land, so we grabbed our rifles and went on the search for them. A mile or so down one of the property's many roads, we came across some hog wallows and new ones.
Why are you holding the gun like that? Why is his friend behind him looking?
We
and
went
why
up
is
the
he
road
holding the gun like that, bro? I swear to God.
Another mile on, we stumble upon 3 large hogs rooting up the ground prepared to make bacon. 2 of us chambered around as quiet as possible on our rifles and took aim. I was less than a second from saying 3 and pulling the trigger when the loud crack of another rifle filled the air, followed closely by a burst of wood and bark above my friend's head. It took a moment for it to register that we were being shot at. A few seconds later, another crack and strike, this time even closer to my friend. We weren't going to wait for a third. The friend who appeared to be the target led us down a side trail that led back to the cabin. No more shots followed as we fled. However, instead of finding safety at the camp, the shots began again. Seeing no other option, we hopped into my truck and hauled it out of there. This was a time just before the commonality of cell phones, so we had to drive the 20 miles to town to get help. After we explained the situation, we returned to the property a few hours later with some deputies.
Bro, this guy legit doesn't care. Oh, look, he doesn't care. He doesn't care.
We approached slowly and remained in the cars when we parked. We waited to see if the shots would start again, but nothing happened. A cursory look around counted 3 holes in the cabin and another 2 in my buddy's windshield. Perhaps the worst was that all of our camping stuff, sleeping bags and such, were spread out all over the ground. Luckily, we'd smoked everything the night before, so the police were none the wiser. Nothing was missing but a box of .30-30 ammo and, strangely, my sleeping bag and wool blanket. A theory began to form in the deputy's mind that we had stumbled upon a squatter or poacher camping out on the property for whatever reason. They acted as if they were going to let it go, but once my friend's dad, who owned the land, heard about it, he put pressure on them to start a search. This was about the time I repeated my story of seeing someone lurking around the cabin. No one was laughing now, and my story was finally being taken seriously by somebody.
Well,
the search was led around the property by my friend's dad. School had already begun again by the time it took place. It continued for a full week, but nothing other than a few old camps were found. It was assumed that he knew the heat would be on him after the shooting incident, and he moved on. During the course of the investigation, several avenues were followed to ID the stranger, like escaped cons, but he remains unidentified to this day. Because of the chance of another attack, our trips to the property ended. The next year, we tried to camp out somewhere else, but it wasn't the same, and our nature getaways died out. Within 5 years, my friend's dad had a heart attack and lost interest in the cabin. The paper company's lease were renewed, and the land's trees have been used to make paper and pulpwood products ever since.
God.
Each time I jot down a quick note, I'm reminded of our awesome trips, and especially the odd and terrifying week that caused them to stop.
Yep.
I do, once or twice a year, talk to my old college friends on the phone. As far as he's heard, that crazy stranger still hasn't been caught. We sometimes theorize as to his origins and where he may have ended up. I, however, often take this much further when I'm alone.
Yeah, and
I wonder why our so-called
strangers... we're done with this goddamn stupid ass story. 3 horror stories, my ass stupid as hell. This was the stupidest story ever. Bro, listen, you will never, ever, if this guy saw you, I'll be happy. Get the fuck out. We're done with this goddamn story. Get the fuck out.